privilege of spending time meeting with Iowa law enforcement during a recent break when the Congress was not in session. I met with them to hear directly what they're facing on the ground. I asked what support they needed from Congress and what challenges these people are facing. Law enforcement faces too many problems, and we need to understand more how that affects their work and their morale. And you know what I heard from these people? That recruiting new officers and retaining their current officers is a harder job for the chiefs to do than ever. In part, this is because young people are being told by leaders, even members of Congress, that being a law enforcement is not an honorable profession. They're hearing that it isn't a career worth pursuing. These Iowa officers asked me to speak with my fellow legislators to stop that kind of nonsense talk. And they happen to be right when they give us that advice, that we ought to honor the policemen today and law enforcement generally. There's no greater love for a man to lay down his life for his community, and that sacrifice of personal safety for the well-being of others is what law enforcement embodies every day. Recruiting and retaining good officers is also hard because of the increase in ambush attacks on law enforcement. Not only are citizens much less cooperative when dealing with law enforcement, but some are actually intentionally targeting and murdering our law enforcement personnel. 2021 was the most dangerous year to be a law enforcement officer in the last 2 decades. Many officers in Iowa aren't volunteering for overtime anymore because it's too dangerous. An ambush attack like this happened a few weeks ago in Los Angeles. 2 officers responded to reports of stabbing. When they knocked on the door, they were shot and killed by a gang member who was out on probation. He should have been already in jail, but he caught a huge break from progressive prosecutors in that city. And this wasn't the first time an officer was killed by a gang member in Los Angeles this year. This type of tragedy is getting replayed over and over again throughout the country. But we simply don't have good data on gang violence and on assaults on law enforcement, so we don't know the exact number of gang killings of policemen. We need more data, which is why I'm working on 2 pieces of legislation to improve data collection on both gang violence and assaults on law enforcement. The Senate Judiciary Committee will have a hearing on attacks on police to discuss these issues. I look forward to having it during that period. I hope my colleagues will stay on target and focus on the violence these brave men and women face, not use this as a forum to chastise police. We cannot wait any longer to talk about this issue and the effects it's having on our communities. And while I'm addressing this issue, I have some related and tragic news. Once again, we in Iowa have a heavy heart as I recognize 2 Iowa officers who recently died in the line of duty. Sergeant John Williams of Coralville Police Department died from a medical issue while he was on patrol July 3rd. He was described by those who knew him as, quote, an extraordinary officer, a friend and a neighbor, fantastic family man, and a true public servant, end of quote. He was a fixture in the community as a 28-year veteran of the force. the longest-serving sergeant with the Coralville Police Department, a department which said that Senator Williams' quote, knowledge, experience, and leadership will be near impossible to replace, end of quote. Deputy Sheriff Austin Melvin Richardson perished on June 14th in a traffic collision. Deputy Richardson was a dedicated public servant in law enforcement for 15 years. He was an officer for Sidney, Iowa, and then joined the Fremont County Sheriff's Office in 2015, where he faithfully served since. Deputy Richardson truly fulfilled the meaning of a public servant. He was not only a member of law enforcement, but also a volunteer firefighter for Percival and Sidney, and he was described as a staple in the community, and he will be deeply missed. Sergeant Williams is survived by his wife Kim, his 4 children, Brandon, Benjamin, Sarah, and Rebecca, as well as 6 grandchildren, Noah, Elijah, Elsa, Adeline, Calippa, and Emma. Deputy Richardson will be left behind by his wife Jennifer and 3 daughters, Brixton, Cheyenne, and Everly. I say to all of them, your sacrifice is honored and appreciated in your community and by your country. We thank you all.